My name's Chris Wilkinson. I'm head of technology here at PREreview. So I'm based just outside Cambridge in the UK. As Chad mentioned, this is our second call. So we had a demo in Brazilian Portuguese yesterday. So I'd like to repeat that demo for you today, where we can look at the work we've been doing and then about the tooling as well. And hopefully we can address some of these questions and yeah, start a bit more of a conversation. So I'm going to try and share my screen now. So hopefully you can see a browser window. Just give me a thumbs up, Chad, if you can. There you go, Arturo. Gracias. Okay, so this is a version of PREreview. You may have seen this on, if you've been on any of our community calls previously, but we run a sandbox. So this is a publicly accessible site that is a copy of the real one. You can do everything you can do in the real one, apart from publish for real. You can go through the whole process, but it won't actually publish a real PREreview. We also use this sometimes to try out new features, to demo things. Mm, of course. Yes. Gotcha. There we go. Apologies about that. We sometimes use it to try out new features. We can demonstrate things. So one of the things we've been doing is being able to demonstrate the work we've been doing for translations. So it looks very similar to our main site, except there's a language picker, which is such a simple thing on the page, but incredibly powerful and has had a lot of work behind it. So if I click this now, we get the option of what language I would like to see PREreview in. So these are the languages we've started with, as Chad mentioned. If I have a look at Spanish, I can see a copy of PREreview in Spanish, pretty much entirely translated. We've mentioned CrowdIn as a tool we're going to be using. So that is a tool we're using to help power these translations. So we write the site into English, where we're asking for help with people to help translate it into the languages that we would like to support, ideally more in the future. Um, and yeah, that is done through CrowdIn. So what is CrowdIn? CrowdIn is a platform, software online for translating lots of things. So for websites, for apps, for games, for all sorts of things, where it can provide a place for people to come, help translate these strings into different languages, and have a bit of a community around it. It is a commercial platform. However, they have quite a good program for non-profit open source projects where they provide their services for free, which includes PREreview, hooray. They also have a mixture of projects which are private, as in maybe people are paying for translations, or public, where they're crowdsourcing, which is what we're interested in. So there are lots of public projects available in CrowdIn, which you could choose to help translate with. So they have like an exploration part of their site where you can see some of these groups. So for example, Minecraft, the game, is here, Khan Academy or GitLab. Reasonably popular bits of software and games are being translated through CrowdIn. But now you can also search for, not CrowdIn, that would be confusing, PREreview. PREreview has now joined this list of open projects, which you can join, and I know some of you have already, which is really exciting. So on CrowdIn, we have this project preview.org, which is our site. So you can see our logo and a description around us, the definition of our source language. So we're saying our source language is English as spoken in the United States. The people involved, so you may recognize a couple of faces here. But also, more importantly, is the list of languages that we're translating into. So as it stands, we're translating into Brazilian Portuguese and Latin American Spanish. Hopefully in the future, we would like to be able to translate to more. We see a little graph here with some percentages. If I expand this slightly, we can see the current state of the translations. So there's kind of two rows here. There's translated, which says none to do, and entirely 100% done. That means there is a translation available for all the strings into Latin American Spanish. The second row is approved, where there's still a few to do. So we require all translations to be approved by someone. So at the minute, this is the language justice team. In the future, we'll expand this to community members. To help speed up translations, we are experimenting with using CrowdIn's OpenAI integration, where when we change a string in English, it will automatically translate into our target languages for us. However, we definitely don't want to trust this, that it will get it entirely right. We want to make sure that someone real who understands not only the language but PREreviews values and how we would like to translate things can approve it. So we require them to approve it so that what ends up on our site is what we would want. So we can go into one of these languages now. So if I click on the language name, we'll see the state of translations across different sections of the site. So we've grouped different translations into these are separate files that are being individually translated, but they're grouped together. So you can see, for example, things about on the About Us page, on the header of the site, on the footer of the site, but also homepage. So that's maybe one we can go and start looking at. So if I click on homepage, CrowdIn is going to ask me to log in. So CrowdIn only give you access to their editor if you have an account with them. These accounts are free. There's lots of ways of joining. So you can set up a username and password, or you can use an existing tool such as Google or Facebook, or you could go without a password at all by using a magic link, which just allows you to put an email address in, which is what I'm just going to do quickly now. So I'm going to put in an email address. So it sent me an email. I'm not going to show you my email, but I am going to copy the link when it arrives. Has it arrived yet? Still waiting for it to arrive in my inbox. This is taking slower than yesterday because that was instantaneous. Did I spell preview wrong in my email? Let me try that again. Okay, I'm going to go back, attempt to type in my email address again, prereview.org. Hopefully, there we go. I hear the chime to say I've got an email. So, okay, both emails have arrived at once. That's helpful. Okay, so I've just copied the link that was in my email and I'm going to paste it into my browser. So it now gives me the option to sign up for CrowdIn. So it just wants a username. So I'm just going to make one up for myself. They have some terms and conditions and a privacy policy to agree to. If I click Create Account, it will send me to where I was trying to go, which is this is the CrowdIn editor, so a place where we can manage all our translations, where we can suggest, where we can review, where we can see the current state. Because I've just signed up for the first time, they do try and provide some help. So there's a pop-up here with some of the details around a bit of a tour of the site. I'm just going to close that for the purposes of this demo. So by default, because I opened the strings in the home page, this is going to show me a two-column view of, on the left here is our source string. So that is our US English, the canonical form. And then on the right-hand side, we have our translation. So this is the current state of translation in the language that we've selected, so Spanish. Because we have translations available, we're seeing values in all of these. We have this first one highlighted, so this is our slogan that appears on the home page, so you might recognize it. We can see more details about this. This button up here, called Show Hide Right Panel, will open a panel on the right that shows us more information around this string and its translations. There's quite a lot to start with, so I'm just going to collapse a couple of bits to make it easier to see. and then I'll go through the sections on this panel here. So the main one here is this section called Spanish Latin America translations. So this contains a bunch of suggested translations for this string. It also signifies that one of them has been approved. So we can have multiple suggestions for a translation. One of these can be approved, and this is the one that will be used. We can change these. Maybe someone's made a typo or something. Mistakes happen. Approval can be changed to another string. Or if the source string changes, then we'll need to go through a process of reapproving a suggestion. So there's a few suggestions here which could be approved. In terms of who's going to approve it, currently the language justice team were working with us to approve translations. In the future, we'll move through to having community members who we work with who will be able to approve these translations. So we will make sure that people that are approving are a native speaker of the language, as well as understanding PREreview and how we want translations to work. There are a few options you can do on this panel. There is also a plus and a minus icon here, which allows you to upvote or downvote. If you don't think a suggested translation will be correct, you could downvote it, or if you agree with one, you can always upvote. If you wanted to write your own suggestion, which I know some of you have done already actually, this can be done by collapsing this panel. And in this section here, I can choose to add some more text and click save. This will create a new suggestion. I'm not going to do that for real. I'm not actually going to click save, but that would create a new suggestion, which would then notify our reviewers that a suggestion has been added and it can be looked at and approved or not, depending. There's a few other pieces of information which might be useful. So sometimes a translation requires some context. So where is this text used? So this top section here, which I collapsed, is called context. This provides some information. There's a few technical details at the top, which you can largely ignore. But we are trying, we've made a start, we've definitely got work we can do to improve this, but trying to provide a description. It will be in English around what this string is, what it means, to provide enough detail for translators so we can get a correct translation. And there are also some cases where the CrowdIn UI is a little not the best for this. There is a little slightly blurry icon here because we have attached a screenshot to it. If I click on that, we have attached a screenshot of the PREreview site and placed in a red box where this string on this page is being used. So you either see the whole screenshot in one go, or if you click the little magnifying glass button at the bottom, it will take you to full size, which is quite large. If I scroll up, I can see this box where this text is. So it's a little bit hard to find possibly, but we are trying to provide these pieces of information which will help hopefully get quality translations that are, can be easily produced. Back in this panel, there's a few other sections towards the bottom. So there's one called PM and MT suggestions. So these are potential suggestions from either previous translations that have existed in PREreview or in other communities. So because we're a public project, CrowdIn have a facility where you can share translations between these projects. If all this information is public, we can help speed up translations by suggesting from another project if the source string matches. It might not be the same context, so it might result in a different translation, but maybe not. So there's always options where it can try and be helpful and try and suggest things. This will be for a reviewer to maybe approve one of these. And there is also another languages section at the bottom here. So this is where you can see the current state of translations in all the other languages, which at the moment is just Brazilian Portuguese. So you can see the accepted translation there. This may not be particularly useful. If we ever end up with variants of Spanish, that might be useful. on the right-hand side here, there are a few more icons with some more places which will be useful. So I'm just going to go through a couple of these now. The first one being a speech bubble, and there is in fact a notification because this is comments. So this is a place which some of you have discovered already. You can ask questions about a translation, you can have a comment, or quite interestingly, there's a checkbox here for issue where you can say, you can raise, rather than just making a comment, you can say what you're trying to do in a way. So there is a few options. One of them being current translation is wrong, which might be useful if you ever want to flag something, or if you ever need them for help. It's like there's a lack of contextual information option here, which it might be we're not providing enough context on how to translate this, so it will be worth flagging. These things would also be shared across languages, because if context is missing for Spanish, it might well be that the Portuguese translators can't understand it either. They may need more context too. So these comments are shared across translations. This can be a useful way to get in touch with people, so that we all have our usernames, so you can choose to @ people. So you can @ me and things, or other translators or reviewers if we ever need to get in touch with each other. And yeah, this will be public across anyone looking at the project. There is this icon here, which looks vaguely like a dictionary or a book, but it is our list of terms that is useful. So CrowdIn allows us to have a glossary. So we can define particular terms and concepts, but also provide a bit of help, because it may be that translators aren't familiar with that word in English if it's not in their specialism or something. But we can also agree on certain translations. So for an example here, because I've selected this slogan that appears on the homepage, it includes the word preprint. We've included preprint as a word in our glossary. If I go back to this, you may have noticed the word preprint here actually has a dashed underline. I can hover over and I can see that is a entry in our glossary that it can help you find what these are quite quickly. If I go back to this right panel, it also shows them here. So in this case, we're saying that the word US English word preprint in Latin American Spanish, we're translating to preprint. We're choosing not to be preimpresa or something, for maybe they may use in Castilian Spanish. We're following Israelo's guidance on the word they use, so we can have an agreed standard on how we translate certain things, as well as providing information around what a word is. There are some more examples. If I collapse this again, then scroll down slightly, some other words appear dashed, underlined. So pre-reviewer, for example, so someone who reviews through pre-review. Preprint, pre-review itself, which has a couple of meanings, which would depend, being both the name of an organization and also the name of the reviews that we publish. So it has a couple of meanings, which may change depending on which one is being, the translation may change depending on which one is being used here, even though they're the same in English. Okay. There are a few ways of changing this view inside CrowdIn. As mentioned, the interface can be complex. We'll just take a bit of getting used to. There are a few ways of seeing it a little differently. So this menu icon here is called the editor view. If I click on that, there are a few options to change the layout here inside the CrowdIn editor. One that might be interesting, so we were looking at the one called side by side. One that might be interesting is one called comfortable. If I click on that, it will reload and look a little differently. Again, it's showing me some helpful information because I've just joined. I'm going to close that for this demo. So all the same information is there. The screen just looks a little different. which may or may not be better for you depending on how you like to work. So down the left-hand side are all our strings and a little preview of the translation, existing translation in italics. And then the right-hand side of the screen is the same information we've seen, but kind of a little bit presented differently. So we can see the context is here, but there's also the text box for editing, which may be more comfortable. So I could choose to create a new translation by editing here and pressing save. Again, I'm not going to do that. There is the suggested translations here with the upvoting and downvoting. And then, yeah, the other sections that we saw earlier on as well. And there is always the glossary and comments available still in this right-hand panel. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is come out of the CrowdIn editor and go back to the project dashboard, which we were looking at earlier. So back on this screen, because I'm now logged into CrowdIn, I see a few other options appearing. So I see the CrowdIn menu down the side, but also a join button. So that allows you to join the PREreview project on CrowdIn. If I do that now. Okay, so what does that mean? It means we'll know that you're interested in helping us, but it will allow you to sign up for notifications as well if you want to find out about if new strings have been added, if there's things you can help out with. So now, because I'm a member of this project, there's a little bell icon here for notifications. By default, it's set to mentions only. So if someone was to mention my name in one of the comments, I would get notifications, but not otherwise. But there are a couple of options for this. I could choose to mute the project entirely, or I could use the global option, which allows it to send notifications for all sorts of things. There are some options around this, which we will get to in a little bit. But if I select global now, so the icon has changed to say I'm being notified, I will receive an email whenever new strings have been added or there's work to do, which will help me hopefully keep track of the project. In here, there is a menu for your own CrowdIn account. So there are various settings that we can go and look at. So I just want to show you a couple of these. So the first one we look at is some profile information. So you can choose to add a picture of yourself or some kind of representation of yourself. You can choose to say, give your full name or not. Some details around who you are. So where you work or details around you. You can change the interface, the language of CrowdIn itself. So CrowdIn is a project on CrowdIn itself that you can contribute to. So there are various translations available, so you could choose to have the CrowdIn editor in Spanish, for example. There's also an option to say your preferred languages. So it might be useful to let us know which languages you can contribute to. So you could choose, say, if I was from Latin America, I could choose to say I can do stuff into Latin American. And that is Latin American Spanish, and also can signify that is my native language. So this can help us keep track of who's a native speaker of which language, as well as possible languages that you might be able to translate into. The other section in here was notifications. So I mentioned there were some options around what types of notifications to receive. If I open this, there's a few options at the top which we can skip over about how to customize where you have notifications sent, such as to a Slack instance or something. But there's a section here called Global Notification Setting, which is where you can say what types of notifications you would like to receive for the projects that you have set as global to receive global notifications for. By default, everything is ticked. You probably don't have admin access to the project, so you won't have to worry about most of these things. But it does include, for example, new strings have been added. So this is an important one to be notified of when a new translation is available. So we, for example, we're adding a new feature, or we may be tweaking the wording on a page that will appear in CrowdIn as a new string, and this will allow you to receive, and however you like to be notified, but having it delivered to you by email might be useful. Okay, so alongside the CrowdIn editor itself, which we're aware is complicated, it's incredibly powerful, but there are details in there that you may want to see something a bit closer to the pre-review site to be able to review things. So alongside our sandbox, we're also running a separate site called translate.prereview.org. Again, this is public, but this uses one of the features that CrowdIn offers, which is what they call the in-context editor. As I'm already logged into CrowdIn, it's not prompting me to do so. It would if you're not signed in. But it allows me to choose a target language which I would like to see the preview site in. So if I choose Spanish and press select, the CrowdIn in-context editor will load. This looks very similar to the sandbox I showed you earlier, apart from, I don't quite know how well over the video they'll show, there are boxes around the text. If I zoom in slightly, hopefully you can see there's like a dotted line around these texts, which if you hover over them, you can see a little icon appear in the top left-hand corner. So that appears for each of these things that has a border around it. If I click on this icon, we see something quite familiar. So this is the CrowdIn editor built into the pre-review site. It allows you to see the current translation on the page and pop in and make any suggestions, any tweaks. You have access to the upvoting and downvoting. Also access to comments, for example, if you want to raise an issue or something, or this is all exactly the same as we saw earlier on. So it provides all the same information. This allows it to work for any of these sections which have a border around it on the site. For example, this menu button. If I do that, it pulls up this menu string and its translations. So you can access the whole of the pre-review site. You can go through the whole flow of publishing a pre-review, but this is also a sandbox. It just won't do that for real. So you can test the entirety of pre-review and interact with translations through this. There are a few caveats. Not every single piece of translation we have appears visually on the site. For example, we send out some emails when we're inviting authors to join a pre-review, or when you sign in for the first time and you're verifying your email account. Those strings are not something you can point and click on. So there are cases where we will need to use a combination of both the CrowdIn editor and this in-context form as well. The other thing this does is at the bottom of the screen, there's a little menu bar which I can choose to drag around if I like. There's a few options here. So if I go from right to left, this first one turns this highlighting on and off. So it removes those borders in case you find them a bit distracting. This second icon, which is like an eye, it allows you to toggle quickly between the source and the current translation. So if I click this, it will go back to the source language, which is English spoken in America. And if I click it again, it will go back to the target language, which we're looking at the moment, Latin American Spanish. Another slight difference with our sandbox, our regular sandbox, is that our regular sandbox will only see approved translations. So it is the real thing as would appear on the real site. This translation site allows you, as you're making changes, to see how they would appear. So you can see how they look in context as well, which is hopefully quite a powerful way of trying things out. There is a third button in the menu here, which I wasn't entirely truthful when I said you can't access all the strings. You can through this menu. You just have to search from them. So it's not a particularly useful way of doing it, but it is possible. What might be more interesting, if you happen to be multilingual, is the ability to, well, as well as being, as well as maybe wanting to log out, you can also choose to flick between translations. So I can choose maybe to go and look at Portuguese, for example. So I can see this is the Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese translation of the PREreview site, providing the same functionality, just with the target language being Brazilian Portuguese. So there is a lot to CrowdIn and translation generally, which I'm sure some of you are aware. It's complicated. We're still learning. It's been a long time coming. This has always been a dream to have available in multiple languages. It's just not a small task, but we're really excited to be able to launch this pretty soon. And we always love getting any feedback or questions or help, either on this call or later on over email or through our community Slack. We'll provide some contact details at the end of this call. But yeah, we're still learning through this process. We've learned a lot, and we really thank the Language Justice team for the help they've been providing. And yeah, we're really excited to have people join us in this effort to get it launched.